When it came out, so I missed it the first time around. 1962. It's Peter O'Toole. That was Peter O'Toole in the white. And Alec Guinness, Omar Sharif, and Claude Rains, if you remember him from Casablanca. He was in that movie as well. This movie won 10 Academy Awards in 1963, including Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor. It was a crazy good movie. And still is. In fact, Steven Spielberg, I listened to an interview with Steven. He's talking about Lawrence of Arabia and sort of the remake of it or the reprinting of it. And he said that when he goes to do his own film projects, this is one of the movies that he watches to get inspiration on how to shoot his movies. It's a true story. T.E. Lawrence, a real person, he was a clerk in the British Army during the First World War, and he was assigned to a station in Egypt. And didn't get along very well with his others, especially with his supervisors, his senior commanders. And so they sent him on an intel mission to go into Arabia, and because Arabia and Britain had a common enemy at the time, it was the Turks. And to evaluate if the Turks could be a formidable fighting force in terms of beating, or excuse me, the Arabians could be a formidable fighting force in terms of beating the Turks. And so he goes. And he's there for quite a while. And while he is there, something inside of him changes. He lives with these people. He not only begins to understand their struggle, but he begins to sympathize with their struggle, so much so that by the end of the movie, he has joined the struggle itself. He has whipped into shape a fighting force, a guerrilla fighting force that is going to beat the Turks against all odds. And so that scene there, right before that scene, he's become so much a part of Arabia that right before that scene, his uniform gets burned. His British uniform gets burned. And he puts on the clothes of an Arabian. He becomes an Arabian. And so now he's on his way back to Cairo to meet with his supervisors. And they're at the Suez Canal, come up over the hill, and that motorcyclist across the Suez Canal shouts, "Who are you? Who are you?" And of course, he's not only asking for himself, but Lawrence is asking that question about himself. Am I a British soldier? Am I an Arabian? Am I loyal to the crown? Do I fight with these people who have become so dear to me, and I understand their struggle? Who are you? It's kind of a question we all ask ourselves in one way, shape, or form all throughout our lives, right? And it comes out in some pretty interesting ways sometimes. Have you noticed the latest craze? The DNA home testing kits? Have you seen the commercials on television, 23andMe? Some, you don't have to raise your hand but some of you I'm sure have taken the test. My brother has taken the test. We found a few surprises in there, a few things that weren't surprises. And so what you do is you spit in a cup, you send it away, and they send you back this report that tells you, it splits up your DNA, and it shows you that you're from this part of Norway and this part of southern Scandinavia and this part of England and France and whatever else, or maybe you're from Africa, and all of this, we almost treat those 23 chromosomes as if it's some kind of cryptic code for us. And it will, if we can understand it, it'll unlock secrets about who we are. So it might, for instance, explain your craving for spicy Thai food. Or it might help you understand why you're the only one in the family with green eyes. Or you can go on to one of these websites and you can get in contact. You know, I'm from Trondheim, Norway, and I can get in contact from other people who have taken the DNA test who are from Trondheim. And maybe in all of that, maybe I'll find a shirt-tailed relative, right? Or this is the best one of all. This is true. MIT Technical Journal has said that these tests can now predict the intelligence of your kid and how your kid's going to turn out. So you can take a look at that when your child's born, and you can say, well, I have to get him into the right preschool so that by the time he gets to college, we'll get him enrolled in an Ivy League school. And these 23 chromosomes are like a crystal ball. And the people who create these tests are making money hand over fist. Because that question shouted at you across the Suez Canal, who are you, is primal. We all want to know who we are and why we are what we are. Let's sing. Okay, so when discovering the answer to that question, who are you, you also need to be warned because you might not like all of the answers that you get back, okay? And such is the case with Jesus. And by the way, Pam, I apologize for that reading. It wasn't a test to see if you could say all the names right. I have a real reason for it. That's Jesus' family tree. And it's not in any lectionary any place. Nobody wants to preach on it, and for good reason. And in fact, no one likes to comment on it. And I have looked in all of my stuff, all of my commentaries, and I've looked online at other commentaries and other interpretations, and people that are down through the centuries, scholars, just sort of, they either do one of two things. Either they come up with the formula answer, or else they want to ignore the genealogy altogether. And the formula answer is this: well, it shows Jesus' line of royalty. It shows that he belongs to this line of kings and patriarchs. But no one's really addressing the real question, because if you scratch just a little bit beneath the surface of all those titles like king and patriarch and father of faith, it gets seedy in a big hurry. And so, for instance, Manasseh is a king, is part of that group of people that Pam read about. He sacrificed a child, his own child, on the altar of Baal, a false god, and then incinerated the body. This is on Jesus' family tree. This is where you come from, Jesus. This is who you are, Jesus. We have Rehoboam, who on the day he had his coronation, he promised that he would lash his people with scorpions. We have Solomon, who had 1,000 wives. This is supposed to be a wise guy. I don't get it. 1,000 wives? Why would you do that? Then there's David, who murders the husband of the woman who's carrying his child. You got that? This is the greatest king of all time in Israel. Murders the husband of the woman who's carrying his child so that the child will look nice and legitimate. And then there is, let's go back a little ways. We've got Jacob, who, if you ever shake hands with him, you can promise he's going to swindle you out of something. And you can go back even further, all the way back to Abraham, the father of faith himself, who gives his wife away, we talked about this last summer, to the Pharaoh, the Egyptian Pharaoh, so that he won't be killed. Stand-up kind of guy. And this is the line that Jesus comes from. These are his people. I can promise you that if there's anything to hand down from one to the next to Jesus, it's not coming from there. This is a messy family. It's a mixed up mess, sinful outfit. And so much so that some scholars have even simply just out and out asked the question, why would Matthew even bother to put this at the beginning of his gospel? I think the answer comes in the next couple of verses that Pam didn't read. Because the angel comes to Joseph. And the angel says to Joseph, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife. For she is carrying a child, and when he is born, his name will be Jesus, and he will save his people from their sins. It's no mistake that genealogy is in there. And you know, they have nothing to hand down to Jesus. Instead, I believe that the genealogy has to be read backwards. From Jesus to Manasseh to Rehoboam to Solomon to David, all the way back to Abraham. Because they have nothing for him, but he comes for them. He comes to save them from their sin. He's not on their tree. They're on his tree. The tree of the cross. The tree of eternal love. The tree of forgiveness. The tree of salvation that makes all things new. Let's sing. So, who are you? Shouted across the Suez Canal to you. And I'm going to guess that many of you have a variety of answers to that question. And some of you are probably struggling with that question. Who are you? Your place in your family. Who are you? Who is it that gives your life a sense of meaning and purpose? Who are you? Is it your sin and your shame that defines who you are? Your trials and your trouble, is that what defines who you are? Who are you? And I would submit to you, though, that there is a man who comes into this world and he lives and he dies for you. He saves you from your sin. And he does this out of love. And when such a man comes into your life, who is not just any man, but the Son of God and the King of all creation, I submit to you that that has a way of changing who you are in this world. Who you are is no longer dependent upon what other people say you are, or how you dress, or how you look, or anything else. Who you are is not dependent upon a set of 23 chromosomes, and maybe finding another family member, or something like that. Who you are is not dependent upon the sin that you carry, the trials that you've known, the suffering that you've experienced. Who you are comes from the God of all creation, who loves you so much that he came and gave his life for you. And when that happens, it begins to change the way you see your world. No longer is your identity tied to someone who brings you shame or someone who puts you down. It's tied to Jesus Christ, the one who came for you. And it builds you up, and it makes you new. And all of a sudden, you begin to see the world around you in very different ways. You will see the hurt and suffering of others. And you'll want to become a part of that hurt and suffering, the way Jesus became a part of your hurt and suffering. You will see the trials of others, and you will want to go to them and offer yourself in comfort, the way Jesus offered himself to you in comfort. Who are you, my friends? Who are you? Whatever it was before this sermon that you thought you were can be placed on that altar. A bundle of weeds picked up along the road. The sin that you've carried into this place. Place it on this altar and know that it becomes the beautiful flower of red forgiveness, the blood of Jesus shed for you. And for that we give him thanks and praise. Amen.